I was born a child of young parents in Lagos, Nigeria. My parents met in secondary school, and at that time my mom got pregnant. She was only 17 and my dad was 20. My father was not happy with my mother's pregnancy. The shame linked to pregnancy outside marriage was too much for him. When she gave birth to me, she didn't really have much support from him. She took me to my father's family house when I was about 5 months, and she had to leave me behind. So I was raised by my grandmother, who thought she did whatever best for me, even though some of her actions turned out to be my biggest nightmares. My grandmother was one of 5 wives with my grandfather. The household I grew up in felt like a palace made for my grandfather. When I was about 9, I was forced to live like an adult, fending for myself most of the time without anyone to look after me, because my grandmother was already getting old when I started to live with her, and she had a shop to run as well. I spent most of the day and much time alone trying to figure things out for myself and to keep myself safe instead of being a child. I was really scared of the dark, and even during the heights of the Nigerian summertime heat, I would still cover myself with a blanket, thinking that it would somehow protect me. One of the nights, I was sleeping alone in my grandmother's room. I heard the floor wood, first of all, cracking, and then the doorknob moving. It was my uncle. At least, that was what I was told to call him. Told me to be quiet and that he wasn't going to hurt me. I started to scream and covered my mouth. I was no one to him, and my pain didn't matter. After what felt like forever, he got up and he left. The morning sunshine arrived. I wasn't even feeling anything at this moment, just existing in the room. I told my grandmother what had happened. She burst into tears and she started blaming herself, thinking it was all her fault. I was told not to repeat this to anyone, so I kept quiet. When I turned 11, my grandfather died and his palace inevitably fell. My grandmother had to go and live with one of her children, and I was passed on to one of our relatives. I started a new school and I started to go to church as well to get myself out of the house and find peace. I was made to believe everything that happened to me was my fault. So I continued living my life in fear, shame, sadness, and feeling let down. I turned 16 and it was summertime when my grandmother came to visit, and she told me that we were going on holiday. I had never been on any holiday, so I was so excited. I went and I packed my luggage, thinking I was going back to the village where I grew up to visit the people that I grew up with. In between the city and the village, my grandmother said he had to stop to go and see someone in the village that I had never been to before. I followed my grandmother to this strange house around 3 p.m. in the afternoon. A tall woman who looked very unfriendly and scary opened the door. She let us in and locked the door behind us. We entered the room and the woman stood next to the door. As I walked in with my grandmother, I knew she stood there to guard the abuse. As soon as I saw the knives razored and a bowl with oil laid on the table in the room that we got into, and 2 other women, one was sitting, one was standing and staring at me, I knew at this moment exactly why we were here. My grandmother told me that it was necessary. The door guardian locked the door, and I knew I couldn't stop them. I wasn't going to make it easy for them, so I screamed and I kicked with all my power, but before I knew it, I was on the floor One of the cutters sat on my chest and the other two held my arms and legs down. My grandmother was standing in the corner with a piece of metal that wasn't even sharp. The cutter kept cutting and cutting away. I was screaming until I couldn't anymore. The cutters were done. They left the room. I looked up at my grandmother and saw her crying. She knew this was wrong, but this happened to her too, and she was made to believe that she had no choice but to do this for me. I was made to lay down on the floor for a couple of hours for the bleeding to stop. I was hurting so terribly. It was really painful. Really painful. And I was thinking of how people could do these horrible things to me and get away with it. It was done to me because I was a girl. After 2 days of being in that house, my grandmother and I, we left and finally went to our village, and we stayed there for some time. But I experienced so many infections back to back and so many other health issues. At the end of the summer, I went back to school and got into the university, and during my final year, I met my husband. My husband was from a different world, and his tribe didn't do FGM at all. It was difficult at first to explain my world to him, but he made everything so easy for me. For a long time, I didn't experience happiness, but with my husband in my life, I felt happy and supported for the first time. Not all women are able to have this. I moved with him to London and had 3 amazing children. Despite all the complications and all the issues I had relating to pregnancies and childbirth, my 2 girls would never be cut. I'm now the founder of Women of Grace UK, an organization created to reach out to women who are going through what I've been through. I created Women of Grace with a vision of leaving no woman or girl child behind.